Hey everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Ed Neumeister, a Grammy-nominated composer, arranger, and trombonist, and alumnus of the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra and Duke Ellington Orchestra. Ed is here to show us how to incorporate elements from other musical traditions into your compositions.
It often happens that we have deadlines, or we even create our own deadline, and we don't necessarily have the inspiration or the time to really generate something truly original. So I find it's really helpful to take something that already exists and maybe twist it around, perhaps, or not, and start that as the basis for a new composition. And just for example, there's a tune on my recording called Wake Up Call, but there's a tune on there called Locomotion. And when that was a commission, and when I was hired to write this piece, I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I was on the road, so there was no piano or anything except for my trombone nearby. So I spent the evenings with my sketch pad sketching out the piece, and I decided to use the chord changes from John Coltrane's Dear Lord, as I always loved that tune. And so I thought I'd steal his chord progression, but expand it and change it. His 2 bars became my 8 bars, and that became the basis for my piece. Ended up mapping out the whole structure, which is a long form, and started with the bass part first and then built up from there. And that's the way I normally compose. And that's from the album Wake Up Call, Locomotion. What we're talking about today, though, is from another recording called Jazz Big Band Graz, JBBG, plays the music of Ed Neumeister, and there's a tune on there called Here and There. And this was same kind of story. I had a deadline. I was quite busy, and I didn't have the time to map out some, I would call it totally original music, which I often do, but the sketching period is time-consuming, usually fruitful, but time-consuming. So there were 2 areas of music that I was very inspired by at the time. And one is the music of the Central African pygmies. And what I loved about that is, or still do for that matter, it's their field recordings, so you hear nature at the same time. And the pygmies are singing and playing percussion, but it's for sure not a performance. And in one of the examples we have, it's actually is inspiration from when the women are gathering mushrooms in the forest and they sing to each other. First example we're going to listen to, actually, is my interpretation of women foraging in the forest for mushrooms and singing to each other. And the melodies that are in my piece are very similar, if not exactly the same, as to what the women were singing. And we can look at that, listen to that now. One of the things I love about that is the antiphonal aspect of the women singing. So I tried to incorporate that into the piece. And the other inspiration for this particular piece was Bela Bartok's Second Piano Concerto. In the Adagio movement, he's got these stacked perfect fifths, a group of stacked perfect fifths moving in contrary motion to each other, but most moving in parallel motion, top and bottom, but the top group sometimes is moving in contrary motion to the bottom group of perfect fifths. And so I thought the reason the piece is called Here and There, the here is inspired by Bela Bartok and the piano concerto, and the there, of course, is over in Central Africa. So now we can listen to a little bit of that. to say that it's almost a complete knockoff of what Bartok did, although he didn't have the African 12/8 rhythms in the background. And speaking of the African 12/8 rhythm, another example that's coming from the pygmies is this incredible 12/8 groove. That's John Hollenbeck playing drums, by the way. It's this incredible 12/8 groove that, again, I more or less stole and incorporated it into this piece. And the full piece, which is actually on my YouTube score video channel, you can check out. The full piece is going back and forth between the Bartok-influenced chorale and the pygmy music, different sections, using in this case, the 12/8 rhythms. And so here is the third example with the African singing and percussion transferred into a jazz orchestra. And that was an example, or a couple examples of using music that already exists from other cultures and other composers and incorporating it into, in this case, jazz orchestra context. Other composers have been doing the same thing. Steve Reich went to Africa and studied the music and then ended up composing music based on his inspirations, and so did Gregor Ligeti, the Hungarian composer. Sometimes I like to say, if you want to get modern, go back in time. If you want to get really modern, go way back in time. And the way back in time, for me, the example is the African pygmies, because they have been left alone from modern civilization for the most part. So their culture and their music is the same as it's been for probably centuries. I hope that helped you. I hope that gave you some ideas and places to look for inspiration when you need it most.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.